Hey everyone! I hope you're having a wonderful holiday. Today's video is really fun and it is a warm, sit by the fire, do some stitching, beautiful peyote stitch bracelet. I created a little snow flurry pattern that looks just like trees in the snow, and it's really fun, easy to finish. Pretty quick workup design because it is a 2-drop peyote. And let me show you really quick the materials that we'll need for this project. So here on the mat, what I have is a close-up view of the bracelet, which again, it's a 2-drop peyote. It has worked an odd count, but don't fret, we're going to do that together. And I used a series of beautiful colors. So some of these are some of the new colors that Jill has recently added in the size 11 Delicas. For example, this color here is like a matte, transparent, dark olive. And I believe this is one of the new colors that came out in 2024. I'm starting with a sky color A that is like an opaque light smoke. It's a gray, and it looks just like the sky color on a snowy day. And then I did this kind of ombre of sky colors and snow colors together. So I brought it into an opaque light gray with a luster to it. So that one has almost like a blue look, right? And that flows right into blueberry as it gets a little bit closer to dusk. And then the night sky of an opaque navy blue. So those became the kind of retro stripe that runs down the design. I thought that was neat. Of course, we needed a tree. So here's our tree, sienna for the trunk, and this cool transparent olive. And then last but certainly not least, the coolest color. So this is a silver plate frosted. It is the snow that flows through the design. And the cool thing about this color is that it also makes really nice stars. So if you're ever doing a design with like a night sky, this color is perfect for stars as well. And so if in the video, I think I accidentally call it stars once or twice, so apologies for that, but it is snow in this design. And so let's dive in. We're going to do a quick recap of 2-drop peyote with an odd count turn, and then we're going to do a cool clasp method that will work for lots of your designs. So let's dive in. To get started, you'll just need your color A for the first few rows. So far I've just got my color A out. And if you check out your pattern, there's a legend. And that legend has each of your colors identified in order of how they're used in the pattern. And so for now, we're just doing the first row. So I've got my color A. I've got a comfortable wingspan of, in my case, I'm using 1G beading thread in a light gray color. But any beading thread is really fine for this. It's super forgiving. So use what you've got, and a comfortable wingspan is all you need because you're going to probably need to add thread no matter what length you cut. It's just not going to be enough for an entire bracelet. I added thread at least one time. So from here, thread on a beading needle. I think mine is a size 11 or a size 10. Again, that's forgiving. So any beading needle size that you've got. And we're going to string what is identified in the word chart of our pattern as rows 1 and 2. So that for us is 10, color A. So there's our 10. And I'm going to string that down, and I'm going to leave a 15-inch tail that will be used to work my closure at the end. And we're going to start a 2-drop peyote stitch count. So we're going to pick up 2 beads, and in your word chart or chart, you'll see this as row 3. So 2 beads. We're going to skip the first 2 beads that we strung in the last step, and then we're going to go through the next 2. So just like that. Pull that through. And your beads might do something like this. They may not pop into the exact peyote stitch position without a little help on this step, but don't worry about it just yet because we're going to be coming back this way and adjusting everything. So pick up the next 2 beads that are in row 3. Skip the next 2 beads. And in this case, you'll see we only have 4 beads left. So in the process of going through these 2, go ahead and just go through all 4. So to complete this row, we're going to need to do an odd count turn. So go ahead and just go through all 4 of the left beads in that row. Or beads you have left, I should say. And you'll get something that looks like this. And the cool thing is if it's flipping on you a little bit, in this design, I like to start peyote patterns with all one colors so that you don't need to worry so much about the flipping. So in this case, this pattern is one of those. So just go ahead and get yourself to that spot. So from here, we're going to do our first odd count turn. So you'll need to pick up the last 2 beads of row 3. And what we're going to do here is we're going to skip the first 2 beads here. And we're going to go heading in this direction through those 2. And then we're going to use these to turn. So I'm going to just go ahead and go through just those 2. And I'll work this individually step by step so it's easier to follow. And things are going to loosen up on you a little bit at the step. That happens to me as well. So what I like to do to make that easier is I'll get to right about here where I've got my loop still available to me. And I'll give one more chance to pull the working and tail thread apart right at that spot. Might even coil it around my finger on one side. You can pinch this work in your hand and pull that through. So you'll have something that looks like that now. And that little configuration is the completion of row 3. And all we have left to do from here is we need to get ourselves in position to start row 4. The best way to do that is to make a turn through these beads, down through 2, up through 2, and then go ahead and carry on through these next 4 beads. And you'll want to head out through the stack that your tail is in. After that, we're going to turn and head down in this direction through those. So how that looks is I'm just going to pick a side, any side. I am not 100% sure if it matters which side you pick. I've always just kind of gone with the side closest to the tail. And up through here. I'm trying to keep my thread on top of the work. So here's that turn. From here, go ahead and go through these 4. And if you can get through in one swoop, that's great. But basically through those 4. And then turn and head through this stack of 2. And that completes your first odd count turn. And now we're ready to create row 4. So referring to the word chart, row 4 is also worked in all color A. So we'll pick up 2 and we'll go through the next 2, and it's easier to see them now because they are our up beads. Two more. And that completes row 4. So we're going to need to take a look at the pattern. And row 5 introduces our first new colors, and the pattern really gets started at this point. So let's take a look at our pattern really quick. All right, so if you're following along with the bead chart, what you'll see on the bead chart is that we have just finished that row here. And we're ready to add the next row, which has 2A to start. Then it introduces our first snow bead, which is color F, followed by a color A. And then our first stripe beads, which is color B. And so in that case, I'm going to get out these 2 colors and we'll work that row together. In the word chart, it's just written out. And you will see that as row 5. And it should read 2A, 1F for Flurry, and 1A, and then 2B. So let's work that one together. And I'm going to get out my color B. My color B is It's pretty close to A, but it's a beautiful, like, opaque light gray. So I just kind of went and almost tried to sort of kind of ombre it a little bit. It ombres into blueberry and then into navy blue, kind of like the sky does when it's snowing. I thought that was kind of fun. And then our stars, or I've used this color for stars in the past, so forgive me if I misspeak a couple of times on this one, but this color, Silver Plate Frosted, this makes fabulous stars. Also makes a really great snow flurry, which is what it is for us today. And so I'm gonna put this one out. And that's actually my color F, but I just want you to be able to see it, so I've got them just in a row here. All right, so let's pick up our first 2 beads of row 5, which are the 2 gray beads. And we'll bring them through. And now we've got our first flurry and the gray sky. And what you'll see here, let's take a close look at what we're doing. We're going to go ahead and put these beads in between by going through the next up bead. But you'll notice we're in a position now where we've got to do another odd count turn. So what I do is a little bit of a shorthand. I'll go through these 2, but I'll continue through the next 2 here. And this is just getting in position to do the odd count turn here. That puts us right there. Now we need 2B. That's the last 2 beads of row 5. And we can take that through and go through these 2 beads right here. And you remember from here we're going to need to do that turn that takes us through the beads below. So if you're working in a shorthand format and it's easy for you, it doesn't have to be done all in one swoop, but if you can get through all 4 of those in one swoop. And then just go ahead and pull that down. And you'll get the beads for your row 5. I'm just going to straighten that out. I want you to be able to see them looking really nice. Sometimes they do this until you get the next beads on in a 2-drop configuration, but basically that's the end of row 5. We just need to get in position to start row 6. So exactly the same thing we did when we were at the last spot that looked like this, which was adding our row 4. We're going to need to turn and head up through this adjacent stack. And our goal is actually to get through all 6 of those. Most of the time, especially in a nice 2-drop configuration, you can kind of do that in one swoop. So I tend to do that. It makes it, quicker, a lot quicker to stitch up. So I'll get you right there. Make a turn. And that'll put you right here, ready to start row 6. So for us, row 6 is 2 color B and 2 color A. So we'll grab 2 B's, go through the next up beads, and then we'll grab 2A, and we'll go through the next up beads. And that will put you there. And now we're at row 7. Row 7 is written in the pattern, if you're reading the word chart, as 2A and 4B. So how that looks, our first 2A through the up beads. And then it's written as 4B, but remember we're working 2-drop, so we're going to break that into 2. So we're going to start with 2B. And because we're going to need to do our odd count turn, I'm going to continue not only through the next 2, which are the up beads, but I'm going to go through the 4. And now I'll add my last 2 beads. And they're being added in odd count, so I'm going to turn and go down through the last stack here. So just like that, plus the next 2. And pull that tight. And then turn, and if possible, usually it is if you work it just a little bit, try to get through all 6 of those beads. That puts you right here, exiting out of that bead. Turn here. And now you're ready to start the next row. And so the next row is just 4 color B. So our odd count rows have 6 beads in them, and our even count rows, or our non-turning rows, I should say, forgive me, they only have 4 beads. So heading this way, I'm adding 4, and heading that way, I'm adding 6, with an odd count turn at the top for those last 2. So this is how to do an odd count 2-drop design. And what you'll want to do is just follow along with your word chart. Sometimes if you're working with the graphic chart, I used to do that, and now I mostly use the word chart, but back when I used the graphic chart, let me show you just a little quick trick here. You can use a Post-it note to follow along with each row, and that can help you know where you are. It's the only tricky part is remembering where your tail came in. So sometimes it's cool to mark the tail when you first start your rows, and that can help you know which side you're on, because then you just look at your piece and you see, okay, so I'm right here. And you can kind of tell which side your tail's on, which gives you a jump start to knowing where you are here. In this case, my tail would be over there. So that's one way. If you're using the word chart, it's even easier. You simply follow along with the chart. And I have 2 methods I use to keep track of where I am, because I rarely work one of these all in one sitting. I'll mark the place where I finished, either with a Post-it note, or you can take a pencil and draw just a light little check mark at the end of the last row you finished. And then when you start working again, just come along with an eraser and just erase it and carry on from there. So that's 2 ways you can follow along with a pattern. If you need to add thread, which you likely will have to, the best way to do that is to leave your old working thread in place and weave a new thread in until its tail stops moving. Bring that new thread to meet the old thread's position. So in this case, I would need to bring it to meet that spot. I would create new rows and then weave the tail thread, the old working thread, up into those new rows and trim it. And that way you don't have weaving in all in one place, makes it kind of bulky and less flowy in one spot. So that's one way to do that. And then when we get to the end, we're going to put a clasp on in a really versatile way that works for lots of different designs. So let's go ahead and work our design to our desired length, and then we'll jump into the clasp. Oh, and I want to say just a quick few tips about the length of the design. So your finished bracelet, if you follow exactly what's written in the pattern, is going to give you a beaded length of about 6 1/4, and that's before you put on your findings. In the case of my findings added 1.5 inches. So if you'd like to make this bracelet longer, or you could even make it shorter by just ending it when you reach your desired length, but to make it longer, repeat your pattern from row 27. So get all the way to the end, and then take yourself right back here to row 27 and repeat that through 56. And that will give you 1 full repeat of tree and stripe. And all that is in the PDF handout that you can check out, so you don't have to memorize that. But go ahead and create, and then let's meet back here for the findings. All right, so at this point you'll have finished your design up to your desired length, and now it's time to put a clasp on each of the ends. So I'm going to need to have just my color A available. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a little fold over tab for the end of each of the sides of the bracelet that we can put a jump ring onto. And so it's super easy, but we're going to need to perform a decrease to bring us to a center point. So I'm going to bring my camera down just a smidge. And let's work the finished side first. So this is our working side. And the first thing we're going to need to do is make a decrease turn. So I'm just going to go back through the adjacent stack of 2. And from here, I'll have a choice of going through these 2 stacks, right? Choose to go through the 3rd one in from the edge. It'll put you going through right there. Make a turn heading in the other direction and pass through the next 2 beads in that adjacent stack. And as you pull your thread through, just make sure your thread hides in the turn. And we're going to do that again heading this way through the edgemost. And there we go. So now we can pick up 2 more of the color A beads, and we'll just go through the next set of up beads. So now we have a point. What I'm going to do is weave to exit from these beads again. So I'll just head down through right here. And you can either go through either of these. If you go through this way, you'll be headed out this way, which is totally fine. You could go through here and go up and go down. Either way works. This is a shorter path, so I'm just going to go through this one here. It doesn't really matter what direction we end up heading out of this bead. We just want to make sure we get our thread over here to this one. So pick up 2 more. And what we're going to do is we're going to build out this little fold over tab by ladder stitching stacks of 2. So just like that. And try to keep that tight. Feel free to reinforce this if you would like. You can do that in the moment as you're creating it by going just back through the beads an additional time. And the count here is not set in stone, but you can go for like a total of 6 beads, and it's just long enough that you'll be able to fold it over along the back and get a jump ring under it. So I've got a total of 2, 3, 4, 5. You could go for 5 or 6, whichever you feel like is the best length for you. And that length is not critical. It can be 5 or 6. Fold that over. And then just go ahead and ladder stitch it to 2 of the stacks on the back side. So in this case, I just chose these gray ones here. And just tighten that. Let's reinforce that one time. And so all we have left to do is weave in, reinforce if we'd like. You can either reinforce the laddered section we just created by just going back through it, or if you did that in the process of creating it, you can always just go into the work directly from here and weave in your thread there. All of this is super flexible. The goal being just to get that little fold over section ready for a jump ring. And so in my case, I just took a little path to bring me here. And all I have left to do at this step is just weave in my thread. So I will go through some beads, make some turns, and trim it. And there's our little fold over section. And let's get a jump ring on that. I'm also going to show you how to start this side. It's the same exact process. But what you want to do for this side is you're going to need to create 1 additional row. Because remember on the ending side, we ended with a row that had 4 beads. Well, in this case, we started with a row. By the way, we started our odd count peyote. We have these 3. So no worries. We're just going to, again, weave to exit from this last stack here. We're headed out of this bead in the wrong direction. So we just want to go up through here. And again, in this case, it doesn't matter which direction you choose, as long as you go through one of these 2. and then just make a turn back through whichever one. Either one of these will work for this turn. And then head down through the second in from the edge. So now we're here. And we're just going to head up through this. So here's finishing another row. We'll need 2 color A. And 2 more color A. All right. And so from here, you have the exact same thing that we had when we started to create the tab on this side. So you'll just want to weave back through to exit from here. You'll add another set of 2 here. You'll need to weave around to get back there. Ladder out 5 or 6. When you fold over to stitch it down, make sure you're doing so on the same side that you did your other side. And then we'll put a clasp on it. All right, so I've got some jump rings and a clasp. Any clasp will work here, guys. You can use a toggle, lobster claw, anything you've got is going to be just fine. And I made a little chain with jump rings as well that I'm going to use to attach. But so far, what I've got here is, I believe that my jump ring is around 6 millimeters or so. This is really forgiving. You can use, kind of any size jump ring that fits, really. And here's one side of my little fold over area here. And I'm just going to bring the jump ring underneath it. And I'm going to go ahead and close that. And now I'm going to pick up another jump ring. And I'm going to go ahead and use this one to put my clasp onto that last jump ring. So there's one side. And depending on the size of clasp you're using and the amount of jump rings you use, the amount of length this is going to add for you is going to vary. But just, test it out. And you can always measure your components attached. Sometimes I'll link my chain like that, to my lobster claw, or even just set it next to it. And then I'll just measure that length. So for me, in this case with my jump rings, which I think are about 6 millimeter, I'm putting in an entire 1.5 inches onto what was 6 1/4 for my stitch design. So I'm getting a good amount of length added to that. I'm going to open the jump ring on this side, and I'm just going to repeat. Add my closure on this side. This is probably my favorite way to finish most peyote designs. Versions of this fold over tab concept work for lots of different drops, and you do not need a center point. You can always work out a peyote if you're using even count, for example. But there you go. So that is how, one way, of course, to finish a design like this. I hope you've enjoyed creating the Snow Flurry Over the Trees bracelet, and I hope you're having a great holiday season and a great winter. And if you create this beautiful design and you'd like to share it with us, please go ahead and post your design into Jill Wiseman Designs Facebook group and tag on social media at Jill Wiseman Designs. And I'd love to see what you create. Happy beading, guys!